I realized that my money story, my abundance story, my entrepreneur story, the identity that I had from childhood, from being in special needs classes with schizophrenic and Asperger and kids with Down syndrome, all of that had an effect on how I saw myself in the world. And so what I did as I became more and more awakened to the truth of my being is I went through this list and I said, okay, these are all the things I inherited. But do I want to keep them? Okay, black people don't swim or surf. Well, let's see. Maybe I surf. Maybe I surf all over the world. And I just switched the whole game up and became a surfer. I had a surf school called Smiles Surf School. I switched everything, bro. The reason for this is the body doesn't know the difference between something that is quote unquote real and something that is not. So when I first began my journey of healing my heart, I started doing something called joy alarms. And every time the alarm would go off in my phone, I would burst into spontaneous joy. Well, what that was doing was it was sending a signal to my body that there was something to be grateful for, something to be excited around. And the neuropeptides and the signals from my brain to my body were going, oh, this guy's in a really good space. Now, there was nothing connected to it. I was just choosing joy 5 times a day. Alarm goes off, boom, joy.
So guys, good morning and welcome to Elevated Conversations. This morning we have a very high vibrational guest on the show, and in our chats before, let's say, recording and going live, there are already synchronicities of people we both know on opposite sides of the world, and I could just feel how easy this conversation was going to flow. So welcome to Elevated Conversations, Preston Smiles.
Ooh, ooh. Thank you, sir. Let's get it.
I love it. And you know, mate, when we're speaking like this, and I mean it, straight away you can often tell a person's vibration quickly, right? You can just, you learn to read the energy. I'm a big believer of that saying, what you are speaks so loudly, people can't hear what you're saying. So
that part.
Yeah. And there must be for you things that you do regularly to keep yourself. Actually, I'm wearing the shirt today, the raise your vibration, right? It's like a big thing that we know is important. What sort of things do you put into your, what have you got there?
Yeah, I just have all kinds of little sticks and doohickeys that this is an African walking stick, but keep asking your question. I got you.
I was going to say, what sort of like little things do you use, like, or you know, like triggers, permission slips, etc., to bring you into this beautiful high vibrational state? Because we all have ups and downs. Like, let's talk about some of that starting off.
Yeah, well, there's a fallacy and a misconception about what downs actually are, and what's really beautiful about, I'll say, the work that I've been studying and living in and swimming in is I watch children and nature a lot. And I happen to have 4 children under the age of 6, 2-year-old, 4-year-old twins, and a 6-year-old. And so their vibration is always high, even when they're throwing a tantrum. Their vibration is high even when they're angry because I won't give them a cookie. Their vibration is high even when they're sad because they don't want to go to school or whatever the case may be. And it's because they do not have a concept called certain emotions are good and certain emotions are bad. My children are just alive and present and riding the wave of consciousness and the human experience. And so they teach me so much. And what I like to sort of help people understand is all emotions come with the car, meaning emotions are like a steering wheel, right? You can't actually drive the car without them. The perception that we have about those emotions is what can get us in trouble. And so because I don't have a big attachment to whether I feel sadness or anger or sexual feelings, people tend to experience me as a high vibrational person. Now, both can be true. I am a high vibrational person, But a part of it is because I don't suppress or make up stories about the human experience. It's all good. And I really actually mean that. There's a distinction between suffering and pain. And I experience pain all the time, but not that much suffering. And the reason for that is because I've been really working on, for the last 20 years, on not being attached to anything, right? I have a high intention and low attachment. So I say, hey, I want that, or I choose that, or let's go play that game, or let's go up that mountaintop, or I'd like to experience this thing. And then the second prayer is, God, do your thing, this or something better. And so now it's like, oh, well, that or something better. And the something better sometimes comes in the form of a storm that my personality doesn't like at first. And then I get to see what's actually occurring. And then the beauty of it just unfolds.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Are you aware of Bashar?
I've met him a few times. I was in a mastermind with him, with Daryl, not Bashar.
Yeah, yeah,
But yes, yeah, he's dope. He's really cool.
yeah. I often get that come up right in my feed, and I listen.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
of course, he talks about how sometimes we get shown what we don't prefer by the
Mm-hmm.
universe, even if it's just to help us be able to appreciate what we do prefer. Yeah,
Yeah.
what our vibrational state we should be going into more. And I really I love some of that wisdom about that, the higher meaning to the positive, the negative. Beautifully well said, by the
Mm-hmm.
way.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, man.
So often people who have this, let's call it a spiritual awakening, or move to by the way, I loved your Instagram page, and I'd encourage people to check it out. So positive, and not just positive thinking. It's sort of
Mm-hmm.
these underlying philosophies broken
Mm-hmm.
down into what I would call practical steps that people can apply day to day. Because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it can be all full of words and these
Yes.
concepts, and you think, okay, well, that sounds really inspiring, but I'm about to drop the kids at school or go to work, or they
Yes.
might be sitting on the toilet having a quick look, right? And they get inspired about, so it's like, how do I apply this? And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
this is what life looks like. And I love that yours was a mix of that.
Mm-hmm.
But often
Yes.
people who are doing what's called, are you familiar with the law of one?
No.
The law of one talks about this idea that certain souls, high
Mm-hmm.
vibrational souls, get to a point in their life where they've got to make a choice as to
Mm-hmm.
whether their life is going to be service to self or
Mm-hmm.
service to others.
Ah, yes.
And
Yes.
I'm presuming, right, that you and I must have made that choice somewhere back there, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
we're putting information out, we're wanting to build people up,
Yes.
inspire them, let them know they can have a better life. Was
Yes.
there something, were you shown what you don't prefer beforehand, before going on this path? And did you make a choice? Could you explain that to the audience as well? Because that could be interesting.
Yeah, man, there's so many layers to it. I'm 44 years young. But
Good
when
on
people
you.
start to hear my stories, they're like, you've lived like 10 lifetimes. And in this one, like I have so many chapters to it. But the long and short of it is I had a heart condition come up when I was 25, and I didn't want to die. So I changed everything. And my cup was so full that I felt called to help other people with it. And people started just coming to me, and it was before life coaching, and before like any influencers. There was no Instagram. There was none of this stuff around. I was just doing it because I cared and I loved people, and it just was a thing that I cared about. And funny enough, because my two biggest audiences are the U.S. and Australia. And I've been going to Australia for 8 years, a couple times a month, twice in a year for like a month. So I've been all over Australia. I've literally been all over, minus where I actually have been where you are, but I haven't stayed there that long. But the story about Australia is really interesting because I have this new book coming out, Spiritual Millionaire, and I teach in this book this concept that the fruit doesn't belong to the tree, that the fruit belongs to the ecosystem, right? Which is sort of like what you're speaking to. Like the fruit can keep the tree can keep the fruit, but it'll stagnate and die. But if the tree understands that, hey, this doesn't belong to me, I'm a vehicle for this. I'm a vessel for these apples, right? The apples actually belong to the worms and to the rabbits and to the people who want to eat them. And so I unconsciously got that and started making YouTube videos and really cool things just to help people. There was no money, no monetization, no coaching, no nothing. I was just wanting to help. And a network marketing company that has a big foothold in Australia. This is 2014, 2015. Somebody passed some of my videos around, and I got a comment in one of my YouTube videos that said, hey, we'd love to bring you to Australia to speak for 6,500 people as the keynote speaker for our conference. And I'm like, do you mean 6,000 humans? Like, that's real? And they're like, yes. And we want to pay you $12,000 and fly you out first class to do it. And I was like, sure. Right. Like I wasn't even trying to do that. And it happened. And I went to Australia. I went to Brisbane and I spoke at the convention center for 6,500 people. And I absolutely killed it. And there's something about Australia. Everybody has places in the world where they feel at home. I'm like an honorary Aussie, man. I swear I got that Aussie battler energy in me. And there's just something about the land that feels like, this is my place. And all that to say, I've had multiple awakenings and openings, including even a couple years ago when my wife and I were at the brink of divorce. And life brought me to my knees, and I wanted to be angry at her and be resentful. And I had to really sit in, how have I caused, allowed, or perpetuated what this is? And what's the real breakthrough here for me? And what came forward was like such a big, huge thing where since 13 years old, I had been trying to prove that I was better than my dad. And I didn't realize that that was still showing up in this sort of nice guy, good boy mask that I was wearing. And I never was good at asking for what I wanted. I just assumed, and especially with my wife, you should understand what I want and need, and you should give it to me. And the reality is that even if she did give it to me, it wouldn't be fulfilling because I would be outsourcing my power to her. And so I had this big epiphany again, right? In my 40s, where I'm like, oh, okay, let's do it again. And have been in the process of like falling back in love, like deeply in love with myself in such a way that anything my wife brings to me is extra. It's the cherry on top, not the cake. And man, there's something powerful about actually genuinely loving yourself so much that you can be of service to others.
Wow, that's deep on a lot of levels,
Mm-hmm.
because and I can tell right there from that comment, right, the depth of your understanding of these principles. No wonder you have a lot of followers, and no wonder you have a lot of people who like love your work, because that vulnerability, but that realization that if you want more love in your life, it starts with the relationship with you. You got to love yourself more, and you've got to allow it in. And I love the observation that other people might think you're really loving. He's such a nice guy. He does everything for everyone. He's always putting other people first. So selfless. Da, 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 da. But it's like the heart chakra's got a one-way valve on it, where you're giving out love, giving out, giving out, giving out. But there might be a block or some sort of false belief on actually allowing that love in. And then because you can't give away what you don't have, right? So once you allowed it in and you had that relationship with yourself improve, it affected all the other relationships. Well done, brother. That's amazing.
Thank you. I
So
appreciate that,
tell
man.
us about spiritual,
Oh, yeah.
the whole idea of let's call it the spiritual intelligence that turns into, like, you talk a lot about manifestation. Hold your book
Mhm.
up again, because I like,
Yep.
congratulations. That's a thick book.
Thank you,
You
sir.
know,
Yeah, yeah.
sometimes people bash them out.
Mm.
There's not a
Mhm.
lot in there. There's a lot of principles there. And you
Yes.
joked about knowing some of our Aussie ways.
Mhm.
So I love that you know what an Aussie battler is,
Mhm.
because what comes with that is a lot of false beliefs in and around wealth, right?
Correct.
I mean, everyone around the world has heard the old money's the root of all evil. In
Mhm.
Australia, if someone's doing too well, they're called a rich prick.
Mhm.
Rich prick. It must be hard to relate to them because they're too successful. They're doing too well. So
Correct.
there is really the crab in the bucket analogy, the tall poppy syndrome. The crab tries to get out of there and to get out from amongst the crowd,
Correct.
gets pulled in by the others. How have you worked on not caring so much what people think, or how have you been able to break some of because a lot of them are intergenerational, right? These things
Right.
in Australia, it's almost like noble to suffer, which is the Aussie
Yes.
battler. There's like some sort of pride in somehow making life struggle. Like, how does that make sense? Yeah.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, there it goes deep, man. I'm not sure if you know this about my wife and I, but we've been leading somatic nervous system based workshops all over the world. And for about 8 to 9 years, we've been doing it in Australia as well. That's why we go every year. And I'll be there in 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. I'll be in Brisbane and no, Gold Coast, to leading a whole nother one. And every place that we go to has a thing. And you already touched on Australia has the tall poppy syndrome. And a lot of Australians don't really understand what I'm about to break down for you. And it's that there are 4 aspects of what it means to be a human, in my understanding. The first one is that we are biological beings, right? We are physical beings. We have cells and atoms and things dancing, and there's a lot here in these physical skin suits. Number 2, we are linguistic beings, which means we build worlds with our language, right? Without the distinction of door and doorknob, getting out of a room would be very hard. But the moment I have language for these things, I have worlds open up to me. Number 3, and this is the one that is very detrimental, and most humans die not moving through most of what I'm about to speak to. Number 3 is we are social and historical beings born into beliefs and interpretations. Now, the Queen sent all the convicts from England to Australia, which makes sense that the beliefs and interpretation of the convicts, right? We're the lower class. We're the ones that they didn't want anymore. Well, that's a consciousness that is the basis, right? Because those people came and didn't necessarily inherit the Aboriginal ways. So, okay, these beautiful English people who were some of them convicts inherit this idea that they're lower. And then 50 years, 60 years, 100 years later, people are still operating from the same consciousness. So some of our biggest work is cutting the second cord. The first cord gives us life. The second cord is what usually holds us back from life. And when I mean cutting the cord, I mean cutting it from our parents, cutting it from society at large, cutting it from the ideas that school programmed us into, cutting it from the idea of a good Christian boy and whatever other programming you might have, in order to find out who you actually are and then reclaim the things you liked that you got from your mom, the things you loved that you inherited from your dad. But for me, and I'll get to number 4 for anybody tracking. For me, I realized that my money story, my abundance story, my entrepreneur story, the identity that I had from childhood, from being in special needs classes with schizophrenic and Asperger and kids with Down syndrome. All of that had an effect on how I saw myself in the world. And so what I did as I became more and more awakened to the truth of my being is I went through this list and I said, okay, these are all the things I inherited, but do I want to keep them? Okay, Black people don't swim or surf. Well, let's see. Maybe I surf. Maybe I ride a 5'10" fish. Maybe I surf all over the world, right? And I just switched the whole game up and became a surfer. I had a surf school called Smiles Surf School. I
I
switched
love it.
everything, bro. Everything. I just started cutting cords. And as I've gone, it's like, okay, well, why can't I have a G-Wagon? Somebody's got to drive them. Why not me? Right? Why can't I have a multi-million-dollar house? Why can't I have 7 houses? Why can't I have the best, most beautiful wife? And I just kept deciding that it was possible. And number 4, we're quantum beings. Quantum beings. This is the Christ consciousness, the Buddha nature. This is it's the field that we live in because we're all connected. And so what's occurred for me is as I've continued to stretch and grow, began to really understand many of the most important laws of the universe and how to use them in such a way that I can be a beneficial presence to the planet. And so that's what I'm writing about in this book. It's how to help people not just understand the concepts of these laws, right? Nobody has a problem with the law of gravity. We just trust it. We see a boat on water and we go, the law of buoyancy must exist. We have no problems with it. But most people don't understand some of the laws, and I've sort of renamed them and reworked them so it's easier for people to digest. But people don't understand how it works. Therefore, they do it unconsciously and they get lucky, but it's never really luck. We're always manifesting. The question is do you understand how to do it in such a way that it supports you and what you truly desire?
Yeah. Wow. That's beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah. And those those underlying false beliefs, as you've just shown, can go into all those different areas of life.
Correct.
And certainly I love that you know Australia because it's not often on one of these conversations that often we have an outside person's perspective of what's going on in here. But it would give a really interesting reflection for people as to if we are discarded by the English, so to speak, at a certain level within that thought paradigm, no wonder Australians love to beat the English so much in any sort of sport,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
and of course we call them the Poms. And it's like, oh, we smashed the Poms. We're going to beat the Poms at this or the Poms at that. And it's like, you know, those buggers kicked us out of the country. So now we're going to, you know, work them over in sport.
Yes, bro. That's exactly it. I love that. I love that.
Sticking it to the man, right? And there is there's that certain amount of rebel to a certain degree. Yet I wonder why it was during the recent, let's call it imposed rules that went around the world.
Correct.
Australians seem to lack a spine.
Seriously.
Very much seeming to very easily give up their free will, which from my perspective is our number one gift from God. You know, it's our gift from the divine. The most precious thing we can hold on to is our free will. And listen,
Yes,
I've got 5 children. I'm 48, Preston, and I got
me.
5. And like you, many chapters of life, right?
Yes.
So there was like, I had to go navigate a divorce, right? Start all over again, lost all the things, you know, the whole story. And I'm smiling and happy and moving on. And it's been, as you know, like these crises can be some of the best things that ever happen. But these points that people have to navigate through in life, they can often make defining differences in their ability to be able to change, right? What's going on for them. You work a lot with people. So let's help people understand exactly what you do, because yes,
Mhm.
you know, you've got an online presence and you've
Mhm.
got that beautiful book coming out, Spiritual Millionaire, which I know people will be interested in. I'm interested, then you talk about this workshop that you're doing on the Gold Coast, which,
Mhm.
let's talk about that sort of thing. Now,
Yes,
what do you mean about reprogramming a person's brain and nervous system? Let's expand on that.
absolutely. So, the body is a living library that stores everything we've ever been through. And most people are not in a relationship with their partner or their mom or their brother or their best friend. They're in a relationship with that person's nervous system. Our nervous systems are formed between the ages of 0 and 7, our psyche and our nervous system. And that becomes an imprint. Now, all of us have heard from The Secret and different stuff that, like, you want to reprogram your subconscious mind. But most people don't understand that, one, the subconscious mind and the body are very patterned together, right? The conscious mind will say, I want to climb that mountain. And the mountain, and discipline, and discipline. And everybody gets excited at come December 31st and January 1st and January 3rd. But then if the body, which has its own intelligence, has not moved through the discharged energy from 4, from 9, from 16 when those guys bullied you, from 21 when you got into the car accident, from 27 when that guy touched you a little too much and there was a rape or a molestation or X, Y, and Z. There's so much that people hold in their bodies. And a lot of people will come to us and they'll say, you know, I've done Tony Robbins, I've done this, I've done Landmark, I've done these things. I've never, ever felt freer than right now. And it's because we spend most of our time working with the body and the nervous system. We put people in high pressure, interesting situations. So it's like, you ever been to an escape room?
No, but I know what they are, I think, but no,
Okay.
I haven't been in one.
So our workshop is like an escape room meets Spartan race meets ayahuasca ceremony meets like mind therapy. It's quite interesting and scary and fun, and a lot comes up for people. And so our job in there is to help people move through discharged energy in their body. And in real estate, they say location, 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 right?
Yeah.
The game is to have spaciousness in the body, because the mind, which is one center of intelligence, we have a lot of science now that says that the heart has its own vibrational frequency. The body remembers, though, what the mind forgets. And so I'll give you an example. You know, let's call this woman Sarah. Sarah didn't know that when she was 3 months old, her mom and dad got a divorce. They broke up, which is very common. And her mom was so stressed out from the breakup that she decided to let Sarah just cry it out in her room when she was hungry or wanted her mom. Well, Sarah, one of her biggest fears is being abandoned. And so she comes into our room and she says, I just like sabotage everything. Like anytime someone even slightly loves me, it's like I just have to get them. And anytime I even slightly get something good, I have to make sure it's working. And she doesn't understand that her nervous system is so wound up from this core wound of crying out for her mother and mommy not coming. Now, that would be one thing if that's the only thing that happened to Sarah. But because of that core wound, and lifing, she gets bullied at school. She gets her heart broken. She gets cheated on at 16. She gets sexually abused at 19 at a party in college. Now, all of this is in her body. She's intellectualized it. She's went to some therapy. She's talked about it. But all that's doing is re-traumatizing her, because it's not giving the body the signal that it's safe again. So now Sarah walks into the bridge experience, which is the name of our workshop. And we, because we are extremely trained at this, understand everybody's coming in here with blood on their hands. Nobody's walking into this workshop without paint all over their canvas, right? And it's not just their paint, it's the world's paint, right? They have trauma, they have shame, they have guilt sitting in them from things that were done to them, things that they then did to another. There's so much. I can't tell you how many men walk in those workshops, and we have a particular exercise where we go into some really deep stuff, and I'll say, hey, let's start now. Just take a step forward if you masturbate to porn. And everybody will kind of be like, and I was like, hey, this is just us. There's no cameras in here. There's nothing recording. Just us in this room. You came here for freedom. 90% of the dudes step forward. 20% of the women step forward. Now say, no, notice how much shame you had in that. Notice how much fear. And you might say, you think it's your fault. I promise you it's not your fault. You don't understand what's occurred in your life in such a way as to why you're reaching for that. You don't even understand what's biologically happening in you for why you're reaching for that. And so we're setting up these scenarios where people have major breakthroughs, straight up miracles. I can't say this person's name. There's a lot of them, but there's a lot of people, big influencers, people, if I said their name, we would know them immediately, who've come into our workshops, not anonymously, but they just don't necessarily want to announce it because a lot comes up in these spaces. And recently we had one of those women come in, and she hadn't had her period since she was 17. And this woman was 35 when she did our workshop. And she flew somewhere else to do it because she didn't want to do it locally where she lived. And on day 2, she started her period. So 17, no more period, right? Hormones completely off, everything thrown off because of stress in the body, because the body will keep breaking. By the way, I know all of this because of the heart condition. Remember, I told you guys I had a heart condition at 25. Well, you didn't ask me where that came from. It came from enormous amounts of stress. It came from not processing the traumas and the things that occurred in my life. So my body just kept breaking. It just kept sending me signals. Hey, if you don't deal with this, I'm going to give you cancer. If you don't deal with this, I'm going to break your heart. If you don't deal with this, I'm going to make stuff not work for you. And so I learned this, not the hard way, but I'll say I learned it in experience before I understood the science of it. Does that make sense? I could go on and on, bro, but we have stories of straight miracles. People doing IVF, can't get pregnant. 2 months after they leave, they're pregnant. And it happens a lot because when you have spaciousness in the body and you clear all that shame, all that trauma, all the stuff that you've been holding and hoarding and tight with, some people don't even remember. They don't even remember until someone else says something. And they go, oh my God, that happened to me too. Or, oh my God, I didn't even understand that my mom not telling me that she loves me is a form of trauma. You know how many people grow up not hearing, I'm proud of you. I love you, son. I love you, my daughter. I'm proud of you. That's straight up neglect. It's emotional neglect. And it's a core wound that people carry into their lives. And they marry from that space. They do business from that space. And it affects everything. So our workshop is literally, and I say this humbly, one of the best in the world.
Good for you. Good on you. And there would be so much freedom for people. Now, I love it. And Preston, I'm very respectful of your time. I understand, but I wanted to just mention something. A lot of people go through things, yeah? And this is like a credit. It's a credit to you what you went through. You got the lesson, yeah? And from that lesson, you went from, in a sense, what I was saying, service to self into service to others, right? Myself as well, with the death of my little sister when I was 5, I took her to the bridge. She fell off the bridge in the stream and drowned. I had to go home and tell my mother. So when you shared with me pleasing emotions, trying to make everyone else happy, I could relate to every single thing of that. Guilt, shame, right, etc. The whole pattern. Some souls get the lesson that they've come in to learn. And of course, in your examples that you've given of Sarah, for you and I, for example, I mean, a huge lesson for a lot of people can be unconditional love. And at a soul level, we come in and, you know, this power of the opposites. So that if we're a powerful, smart soul, right, and we come in and we fall under the veil of forgetfulness, and we forget that we signed up for this, and we forget that we've come in to play a game even and to learn a lesson, we go through the opposite of unconditional love, right? And in your example, all these different situations where, let's call it Sarah, didn't feel loved, didn't feel recognized. I'm sure that pain, that heartache for yourself in your heart. I know for myself, same thing. And then it's when at a soul level, something, let's call it awoke, right? The awakening. And you realize, holy heck, that actually was a gift. And I wouldn't be who I am today if that hadn't happened. I wouldn't have the 5 kids. I wouldn't be living the life I live and traveling around, meeting people like you, having fantastic conversations. So lots of people have had pain. And I think it's so beautiful in the work that you do that you're saying to people, this doesn't need to define you.
Correct.
And also at another level, the sort of person who gets to this stage where they're trying to work through it or see a meaning to it, there's not a lot of souls that get to that point. I mean, Preston, I'm sure you would agree. Sometimes you're in the grocery store and you can stop and have a look and actually around realize 90% around, or 95, 99% of people around you are asleep. They don't know they've got a soul. They don't know that they can influence their whole life. So let's finish with people just giving them some inspiration about how if they're not in a good place, they can start taking action, make some changes, and like create success as you have done. Like they can become spiritual and a millionaire, as the book talks about. You know, woke doesn't mean broke. I love when Billy Carson talks about that. Woke doesn't need to equal broke. Sometimes people think to be a spiritual person, you got to live in a van and travel from festival to festival, meditating under a tree. You know, that's not the reality, right?
Yeah, you're spot on, man. Yeah, there's life can be extremely challenging, even for those of us who would fall under the category of woke or awakening. And one of the things that I help people really understand is around observing but not absorbing, right?
Ooh, I love.
Like care but don't carry. And it's for a
Ooh,
lot of people,
great.
they get so caught up in the illusion of the thing that's hurting them that they don't understand what's really occurring. And I'm going to go back to the conversation around manifestation. There's never a time when we aren't manifesting.
Yeah.
There's this idea, or one of my mentors came up with this, the 4 stages of consciousness. The first stage is to me consciousness. This is where I'm a victim to the world. It's the weather, it's the government, it's my wife, it's my husband, it's my partner. That's why, right? It's the algorithm. That's why this isn't working. The second stage is by me. This is where we will things into existence. We say, I'll make it happen. I'll put it on my back. I'll beat my chest and I'll make it happen. I'll walk through walls, right? It's not bad, not bad, not bad. The third stage is through me consciousness. This is where we say Spirit, God, Buddha, Krishna, Jesus, Allah. Use me. What would you have me say? What would you have me do? Where would you have me go? Use me as a walking, talking, living demonstration of what is possible. Right? I'm doing this job, right? But there's something in me that says, we're on this trip back from Costa Rica. We gotta get rid of that. We gotta open something else up, right? That's through me consciousness. You were available, right? My mentor says the best ability is availability, because that opens all the other ones up, right? And so you were operating, whether you were conscious of it or not, from through me consciousness. The fourth stage is as me consciousness. Now, this one is a little trickier because this is Christ consciousness, the Buddha nature. This is that moment where the ayahuasca, the mushrooms, the Molly, the Holy Ghost hits in church, and you get that there is nowhere to go, nothing to say, nothing to do, because God is all there is. There's nothing outside of God. There's no border, no place, no drawer, no part of the ocean where it isn't. And so you can just sit and relax and sit in the seat of consciousness and enjoy the ride. And no matter where you are in that, and just hear this. I could go through all four of those in an hour. It's not like you get to one and you graduate and you never go back, you know? I will be in through me consciousness at 9 a.m. and by 11:30, I'm in victim. I'm in to me. And then by 11:34, I'm in by me. And by 11:36, I'm in as me, right? We can move through these stages of consciousness. It's just, do you have awareness around it? And for anybody listening, no matter where you are in your life right now, I want you to understand that you co-created it. You co-created it. And if you would like to create something else, here are a few steps that you could do that would support that creation. Number one, as you observe, see if you can disconnect from the absorption of it. Can you step back from and view your life and the situation from a different lens? Because awareness precedes choice, and you can't disown that which you have never owned. You have to see it in order to do something about it. So bring awareness. Number two, oftentimes the manifestation of things that we don't like aren't directly connected to the thing. They're connected to the vibrational frequency that you're operating from. And that vibrational frequency that you're operating from could be connected to someone or something or situation that you haven't forgiven yet. So what I have my students do, make a list of all the people, all the scenarios, everything that you still feel charge around. And one by one, get to where you can. If you are a 9 out of 10 when it comes to not forgiving your ex-husband, see if you can get to a 6. And I'm not asking you to just fully forgive in a moment, but what would it look like for you to just loosen the grip of he screwed me over? Because women do this. A lot of women come to me. I coach thousands and thousands of women. And I'll say, okay, if you knew that you would be remarried with your own children, happy as ever in 2 years from now, would you still hate him like you do right now? And usually the answer is no. They only hate him because they think it's over. They only hate him because they think he won. There's no winning in this thing. Everybody's winning. Everybody is winning. But you slow the progress of the thing that you desire, because what you want wants you, what you seek is seeking you. You slow the progress of it when you hold resentment. So, number 2, forgive what you can. Number 3, and this will be the last one, I can go on for days. Number 3, though, is choose daily to tap into some level of reasonless joy or joy that you can connect to a reason. The reason for this is the body doesn't know the difference between something that is quote unquote real and something that is not. So when I first began my journey of healing my heart, I started doing something called joy alarms. And every time the alarm would go off in my phone, I would burst into spontaneous joy. Well, what that was doing was it was sending a signal to my body that there was something to be grateful for, something to be excited around. And the neuropeptides and the signals from my brain to my body were going, oh, this guy's in a really good space. Now, there was nothing connected to it. I was just choosing joy. 5 times a day. Alarm goes off, boom, joy. Right? Now I go back to what I'm doing. Now, what happened was let's say I was vibrating at a 4 when I started this. Well, 5 months in, my base level, where I'm just living at as a regular human, is like a 7.5. And then I'm popping into these ecstatic states, 8, 9, 10. And then when I come down, I'm not going down to a 4, I'm going down to a 7. So my low is a 6. My old low was a 2 or a 1. Is this making sense? So
Yeah,
I'm
totally.
literally putting myself in a different state of being. I'm operating in a different consciousness, a different paradigm, and it's affecting my body. Those 3 things will change your whole life.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And I love it. As I said again, practical ways that people can apply these beautiful like concepts that influence your happiness, your fulfillment, and help people to live more in authenticity, because it's draining to be something that you're not. And you owe it to yourself to be what you came in as, the natural spark of the divine, to be authentic. You owe it to other people to actually be who you are, not what you think they want you to be, because you've got a unique little something. We all do, right? That is unique
Correct.
to us. We can say the same words as someone else, but say it through our vessel, and it's different because it's us, right? That's that spark of the divine. So, man, I love that you're. Let's talk about the workshops you've got coming up. What sort of places between now and in the next sort of 3 to 6 months? Like, what sort of places where are you going to be? You're going on the Gold Coast. Where else
Yeah.
are they? Weekend workshops? Are they 4-day? Do they run over weekends through the week? What have you
Yeah.
got coming up?
Yes. So this is our one stop in Australia. We used to do all of Australia. So we'd start in Adelaide and go Perth and like just do a big circle. Now we just go one place, and everybody in Australia, you either come to us or we can't do it because we got so many kids now. So we'll be in Gold Coast October, I think it's 11th and 12th, and then the following weekend. But it starts on a Friday that following weekend. And I suggest anybody who wants to do it, it's thebridgemethod.org. Do both weekends. You will literally never be the same. And we have thousands of testimonials, thousands. You ask around enough in the Gold Coast and in different parts of Australia, you will find somebody big names, people who people follow, who've been in those rooms. And they all explain their life before Bridge and their life after. And it is drastic. So Australia in October, January in Austin, Texas, and then we're going to put up some new dates after that. But right now, those are just the 2 that we're doing.
Wow. Well, look, wonderful, wonderful. So great to connect with you. So Gold Coast is about 2 hours from the Sunshine Coast, where we are based. And man, thank you for all that you're doing, for the consciousness of the planet. I love that term, the rising tide lifts all of the boats. Yeah.
Yes.
So as you and I just meet and connect and chat so effortlessly and easily, and others who will watch this, sink into those beautiful words that you said, and they just feel a little bit more positive, a bit more optimistic, have a bit more gratitude through their day. All of us can help to rise that tide, lift the consciousness of the planet. So yeah, Roxy and I, even though Roxy's not here today, she's here in spirit. And listen, thank you for all the work that you do. For people who want to get the book or follow you, which I would really recommend people do. I mean, we're all in this together. Like, we want to make this world a better place. So how do people follow you? What's the best course of action?
Yes. So if you want the book,